Hi, welcome. It's us from Open the Gates Gaming, and this is Ask the D&D Professors, and we're sort of doing a talkback about the adventure that we ran recently as a uh, oh my gosh, brain fundraiser for the ASAN, uh, right? Autism Self Advocacy Network, which was great, and we had a blast. So we did an adventure called Riddle of Many Things, which was created by our very own Elizabeth McLean. I'm Gustavo. I played Warlock that day, and I'm going to throw it to Sean because he's directly beneath me in the order that things appear on my screen.
Hi everyone, I'm Sean. I played a paladin during the game, who was what was the exact phrase I used? Hat, sunglasses, booty shorts.
Yeah, I
Thank
don't
you,
recall there
Atlas,
being
for the
anything
art
on
idea.
them.
No. I was reminded at some point to put armor on, though it wasn't really necessary. I'm gonna throw over here to Gray.
Hey, I played a wizard, who I had run initially in playtesting some of Open the Gates tools, because I mostly play martial classes, and it was a delight.
Which is a great note because we all used, just to mention that we all used pre-generated characters and Open the Gates Gaming character sheets,
Yeah.
and spell cards and ability cards as a way to highlight some of the tools that we have available for folks. And you can see our decision guide being displayed by Gustavo and our ability and spell cards being displayed by Gray here.
All of which were great tools and really fun to use, and always make playing pretty easy. We just jumped into that game pretty quickly. We were also joined that day by Andy, who is an artist out of Chicago, and he was great to have along. Unfortunately, couldn't make it today. So yeah, it was a really fun adventure. Elizabeth created it with neurodivergence in mind, um, and it reflect that. And I thought it was a really fun game to play with all of you, and also just the the setting was really interesting. What did you guys think? What was your favorite sort of part of the adventure that we played through?
Gray, please.
Sure. I thought that it was fun, the hijinks we'd gotten up to, even when we were within the mystery itself. It was funny how long it had taken us to figure out where to say that necessarily, which I think is just a limitation of there being physical props. It really was just a fun time. But definitely those kind of offshoots that we would pull, and immediately getting distracted by the cat, which I feel is kind of every time there's any kind of animal that happens. But that's what I'd say, probably.
Yeah, that's fair, and I have no doubt in my mind that Elizabeth wrote in the cat just to because of a deep knowledge of how many folks who are drawn to D&D, especially the kinds of adventures and spaces that we often play in, feel about cats and don't. I mean, the reaction to any time any one of anyone's cats shows up on this stream is a good piece of evidence towards that. I really like the balance of the adventure. Between giving each character, I mean, so it's sort of set in a kind of third space, like it's a interdimensional resort thingy where the person who owns it, invites adventurers to rest and recuperate. So an adventure that can be kind of dropped in to any setting, any campaign, as a little, I don't know, tangent or side quest or interval or intermission. It gave each of the characters a chance to sort of be introduced in a unique or interesting way, and then pulls you into a really, classic TTRPG setting. Oh, hey, here's a mystery at a bar. Um, Except that the mystery is at the bar instead of the bar serving, or the tavern serving as a space, like a launching point for something else. The personal connections, a bunch of weirdos in the tavern that all scream, "I'm part of a mystery," and maybe aren't. Maybe you're just interesting, which leads to some of those distractions and those moments that are so great, and so much kind of what, at least for me, drives me to games like Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop role playing games, right? That the fact that Elizabeth clearly put a lot of care into who populates that tavern, with a sense that any direction you go could be something that you could also build out if you wanted to into a hook for a whole other adventure. Here's a dwarf, he's really grumpy. That's enough to catch anybody, anybody's eye.
I Yeah, I really liked uh one, the setting, as you said, Sean, and how we were encouraged. Everybody introduces their character sort of in a private moment of doing something that that character enjoys doing, um, sort of, and that was like a really interesting way to add dimension to a character that you've just sort of chat's blown up. Uh, from nothing. So really, because I really dropped in with a very sort of simple character, and then I was just like, oh, with this sort of initial prompt, had to really sort of develop it very quickly. And it worked really well, so that was really nice. Um, I love that we sort of did the tavern thing and sort of kind of turned it on its ear a little bit by, instead of being a sort of random meeting place, it was a place that we went to with purpose. Um, and I really loved all of the characters that were there as sort of side quests, and also like we definitely had a lot of room to like mess around at first, because I like it took a minute for the mystery to reveal itself, or sort of the gimmick. Like, there were a lot of interesting characters, like, you mentioned the grumpy dwarf, there was the couple arguing in the corner, there was a hen
And snipe.
party, um, there was the bard who we never got to really interact with, which I was
Yeah,
bummed by, um,
and
a
also
very
bard
fun
in
half.
quotations. Sorry, I didn't
Yes!
mean to cut
Oh,
you off there.
no, 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 but what was it? We'll never know. So, that was really fun. I really, really liked that. Um,
Even
yeah.
the like the sort of playing with that trope of a creepy little child who wants to, I mean, it's the most famous version is the twins in The Shining, right? It's a creepy little child who's like, "Come play with me." That certainly my character, and me, having never played this adventure before, was fully on board with this being a horrible demon from beyond the stars or whatever. Turns out just a person who needed help, and for some reason this was the way they asked for it. Great, love it. Again, playing with all sorts of different kinds of tropes that are so standard to the medium, to the genre, in really um, sometimes small, sometimes big, but really really neat ways. And the fact that the adventure kind of culminates with like the fates themselves, but also fully in the back of this bar. Like, okay,
Right. Yeah, like, we really went from to outline it a little bit for those who aren't here, we go off to we're at this resort, having adventured together recently, and then, a friend of, was it your character, Sean? Has, misplaced their partner, um, at the tavern the previous evening, and so we are sent off to go find them, and that's sort of the, initiating moment there, which then led us down a road which did lead to fate itself, which was pretty wild and a fun ride. So yeah. uh,
maybe I can ask this. Gustavo, you just mentioned, you know, a little inside baseball. Gustavo and I chose our characters about 3 hours before the stream started, because we were each waiting to see what the other one would pick. So I'm curious about how then you built that character in play, like your thoughts going into kind of developing their personality, especially because you have a big moment at the end of the adventure, um, where you sort of take
So
a bunch of it into your hands. I'm just curious about the kind of personality and the way you role played it. I'm going to ask you the same question, Gray, in a moment as well.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I took a lot, and this is a thing that when I'm making a character, I do a little bit. Try to like make. So I was working from the character sheet, basically reverse engineering. Why does this character have these spells? What's the deal? Like, it's and I was playing a warlock, and it was a pact of the fiend. So it's like, how would how would somebody feel about having a pact with a devil? What is that like? What are the terms of that arrangement, and what sort of person would what how would that manifest in somebody's life that's essentially living with that? Which I always think, I love warlocks. I think this is an interesting thing. I like the idea that it's like kind of a cleric that's been press ganged in some ways. So I think it's really interesting. So that was kind of it. And so I was kind of like looking at it like that. That was kind of the primary lens of it. And so when this opportunity potentially came at the end to try and modify that agreement and sort of take power back, I kind of thought that the character would leap at the chance, right? So that was kind of like my thought process with that. Other than that, it was just kind of like a kind of edge lordy typical warlock dude. I think I described him as like a dandelion except dark. Um, uh,
I
so
believe that was the
yeah,
case.
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
but
it's a great idea, and I think a really interesting set of questions. Right, it's not so often that folks, at least in the games I've played or in the kind of media around like fifth edition warlocks, um, think about what, and maybe this is the case with a lot of kind of player character classes, like think about what the decisions that led to that actually mean for like how you live your daily life. And so maybe that's partly because, we embody these characters usually on adventures. We don't, even though there are plenty of kind of downtime mechanics and things built into the system, that's not so often what people are actively playing, right? So what does a fiend warlock do on like a Saturday night on their on their own, right? What does a paladin do when they don't have a quest right now, when they've devoted their whole life to like some, concept or set of values? What does a wizard do? What does a wizard do? Greg goes to the library, beautifully. But yeah, it's a great set of questions, I think, and the adventure is built neatly to help show off some of that.
but that initial prompt that Elizabeth had given us of like, what is your character doing when they're not adventuring, when they're not like in D&D mode, was like really kind of the seed that allowed a lot of that to grow. Because I mean, like, part of it is, having been doing this for a while, I like to overthink things, and like, it's very easy to show up and just throw an Eldritch Blast around for a few hours and have a great time. But it's like sometimes it's like you get having doing it for a long time. It's like you want to explore the corners of
Hmm.
these characters and opportunities that the game is offering you, after you've sort of explored a lot of the rest of it. So there is that as well.
Yeah. Gray, same question for you. Like, are there particular aspects of the character or the sheet that shaped, or you're, I guess, not usually playing wizards? Um,
Yeah, that's definitely abnormal for me. Um, I am very, very comfortable with martial classes. I love my fighters. and currently I'm doing a Echo Knight Fighter Barbarian multi-class situation, so I'm very, very comfortable hitting stuff and hitting stuff well. So wanting to branch out using the wizard class to try and showcase the tools as well as possible, especially when the mechanics of that has been very intimidating, even though I've played for nearly a decade. That was really the intention there. Honestly, I had run him in a one shot prior, and I was nervous. I was nervous to be doing another one shot. I mostly do longer running campaigns. I was nervous to be playing with a new party, especially a group of people that I really respect, and I think y'all have a great initiative. I was scared shitless. I never shut up, and I feel that I ended up very quiet, because again, scared shitless. But going into the character, I had wanted a couple months prior because my friend and forever DM, also the brilliant physicist, we'd been going through the monster manual at like midnight, when we both should have been asleep because we both had early classes. And I'm like, man, there's a lot of really strange parasites in the Forgotten Realm setting. Someone ought to try and categorize that. And so Willowin, with all of the I's and Y's that you can cram into a name, was created. And especially when Elizabeth had mentioned, yeah, there's going to be a one shot for the Autistic Self Advocacy Network. You could be able to introduce your character using their special interest. It just seemed intuitive that that would be the character to play. Though admittedly, he's currently being used for a longer running campaign as a warlock build. Back to the Tome, Great Old One patron. As my friends have put it, effectively fantasy Lockheed Martin. He's chaotic good, and he's very mild-mannered, polite, doesn't really want to hurt people, and is going to try and limit that damage, despite the fact that he's still doing the whole Lockheed Martin thing. I realize I probably haven't answered the question at all, but
No, this is great.
yeah.
There's a
I
moment
am
when
curious.
oh, sorry.
You were saying.
Oh, there's a moment when you and Elizabeth were introducing your character, that the person, and I've forgotten their name now, who owns the
Asteria, I think.
Asteria. Yes, right. I remember giggling a little bit about that, knowing that this adventure, I believe, was written before Baldur's Gate 3 came out. But there was a moment after you, Willow, had a conversation with her that Elizabeth said you have a feeling like you've passed some kind of test. And I'm curious about, like, as a player, you've shared a little bit about being nervous about it. Did that help? That, like, in character moment?
The feeling of passing the test, or
Yeah, because I mean, it seems like, I don't know. I mean, speaking for myself, like, something about this sort of legendary adventurer who's set up this whole space, having given a little bit of approval to the character in character. I'm curious about whether that reflected in your experience, kind of, getting into the adventure as a player.
it was definitely, it gave me a frame of reference for what to expect. I haven't played with Elizabeth as a DM before. To be frank, we just come out of the semester, and Doctrine Claims my professor. So it definitely had given me a frame of what to expect, which was, she's awesome, as expected. What it did set up, though, as a forever note taker myself, was, is this entire thing just a test from Asteria? And reading into everything 110%, yes, this has to be a test. Surely this entire thing has been orchestrated, and I'm just this close to catching it. Which was, of course, not the case. Which meant
we
that I
don't know that.
fully missed. But I guess she could have gotten the Fates on board. I did fully miss anything about the Fates, and I was curious when you guys had started to pick up on that, because it took me until the very end to realize.
Oh, it when I mean, like, not early by all means. It was, I think when, like, at some point when the sort of the sewing accoutrement came out, I was like, oh yeah, scissors, loom, thread. Fates was when it
Yeah.
clicked in for me, but it took a while, and there was, like, there's some good misdirects there, I think. I mean, the girl and the cat. Oh, and it was the three characters of different ages, but also, like, the cat was a good misdirect there as well,
Mhm.
with a sort of gender swap, from the sort of traditional mythos of the three fates. But yeah, that was when it
Species
clicked in.
swap.
But that was like the last, what, 10, 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah. I mean, there
think
was a
so.
point earlier on where we fully saw a mural of 3 people, like, with string and scissors wrapping around them. And that was the moment for me, but again, that was, like, an hour into the into the game. I was like, "Weird kid has a mystery, I guess. That seems like enough for me." Nope, turns out it's a whole world implicating in the most surprising ways possible, yeah.
Well, and then there was, like, I mean, all of the riddles were also, like, really fun, but um I had not connected those to sort of the larger arc, and I think they were largely not meant to. I
Yeah, I
feel like
don't
that's
think I
kind of
have
the vibe.
still.
Which is also kind of fun because it's, you know, it's not a self-spoiling adventure in a lot of ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
my
I
read of the
feel that.
rid oh, sorry,
Sorry.
please.
No, please go for it.
My read of the riddles was like it was just the little girl slash fate trying to see if we were smart enough to actually be able to help her.
Right.
But at which the answer,
Uh,
of course, was maybe.
And I
yeah.
remember as
Well,
well. Yeah,
she
she'd
was
been made to
cursed,
talk like
right?
that.
She was
Mhm.
cursed to speak only in riddles.
I've had some professors, I think, who
Feels about right. Yeah.
yeah.
yeah. Um, what about you, Sean? How did you sort of shape garlic?
Yes. So then this one's actually really easy because Garlic's entire personality was based on 2 things I had received that day: this hat and new pair of prescription sunglasses. And I was like, "What can I
Hell
do with
yeah.
this?" And as at least one person in the chat very neatly, one of my friends who was in the chat at the time very neatly called me out in the chat during the stream for. But yeah, I was like, "How can I be a paladin?" I mean, I love playing paladins, and I love playing paladins who are either stupid, like I love playing a himbo paladin, or paladins who are like deeply naive in some very important ways. Because to me, I think that, like, for me, that sort of typifies something about the most interesting paladins is that they are so, or can be so, committed to their cause and their ideals that everything they kind of get blinkers on. And at one point, Elizabeth tried to have one of the characters call out Garlic for that. They're like, "You're willing to sacrifice anything for your cause," and Garlic was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah." And the most fun ways are yeah. Yes, for the chat, my character's name was Garlic, Garlic the Paladin, and Gustavus was Ginger, and it is to my great disappointment we didn't communicate this with any of the other players beforehand because we could have had a whole recipe just in character names. Um,
Well,
A
to
full
be
spice
honest,
cabinet.
I saw that you named your character Garlic, and I had made a garlic and ginger something the day before, and I was like, "Oh, garlic and ginger. Yeah, obviously, 2 adventurers together." So I
uh,
came up with it on the spot. It was not planned.
right. Um, I do want to just thinking of character kind of concepts. Do want to just props to Andy who's not who wasn't able to make it today, but at like 4 or 5 times during the adventure, um, when given some kind of reason or impetus to justify an action that they were doing, and he just said, "I'm a ranger," and it made perfect sense in every context in the most beautiful way. Like, again, thinking about like what I love about paladins, if we think back to the kind of core of the ranger with your like, Aragorn sitting moodily in a bar for absolutely no reason. Like, he didn't have to do that. Like, just aura farming, little fella. It's Yeah, it's so beautiful. Like, why are you doing this thing? I'm a ranger. That's just what we do. We're just weird like that. It's great. Yeah.
Also, I think sometimes for these one shots, right? It's great to be able to embrace a an archetype, a trope, and just go wholeheartedly after it.
Mhm.
Like, you know, don't worry about the things. It's melodrama, it's commedia dell'arte, whatever. It's like don't overthink it. Just pick a lane and then just stay in it, and it will lead to a good time.
Yeah.
Um, and that was also part of it. Like, yeah, I think like that initial special interest thing was like, oh yeah, I'm into botany, and then I found a flower, and then I impulsively picked it. I was like, this character is now just impulsive, right? So like that was
Yep.
it. It was like, okay, impulsive warlock.
Yep.
And then just sort of chase that, and so let yeah, which was fun.
Yeah. I mean, my version of that was just like, I'm just extra.
Yeah.
Just a little much in every way, and I love it. And that's the joy of one shots as well, right? Is I often, when I'm building characters for longer campaigns, I often get hung up on like utility. How can I be useful? How can I be skilled in various ways in different kinds of situations, out of combat, in combat, etc. Not trying to like do everything, but don't want to find ourselves in a whole session of role play where I can't do anything as a character. But a one shot, are you useful? Nah. But I'm here. Are there are there long term consequences if we fail to solve this puzzle? Nope. Maybe, but I don't know if there are. It's great. It's beautiful. It's just a moment for experimentation, right? For a pure creative sandbox.
But still, the way that your guys' characters had culminated in that moment at the end, that moment of, are you considering this fully? Are you thinking this through? It was just really beautiful how both of your improvised concepts had come together really to its head of this being another ambitious moment, maybe tying into how that deal had formed in the first place. Whereas, again, I feel like that could even be, if this were a longer running thing, a moment of self reflection of, am I going about this the right way? Being a paladin, because I also love playing paladins. Having that moment of doubt, having that moment of conflict, I feel is always a fun thing to play. It was just really interesting how characters who are silly, Garlic and Ginger, had really just grown and blossomed in that moment. It was cool.
And a moment of like what ended up being um, a moment of real conflict over genuine interpretations of what like prison reforms means, which is the old adage of no, some part of it at the end of the day you're always just playing yourself, but
Yeah. No, it was really good. It was really good. I really liked that. Yeah. Also, like, would never have done that in a game that was not a one shot, right? Like, because like that is essentially writing the character out of the story, and like
Mhm.
it's like, okay, here, this is now this belongs to the DM, which is a choice that's much easier to make in a one shot than it is in a campaign where you're like you grow attached. You think about your character a lot. And I think the playing a lot more one shots in the past couple years since working with Open the Gates has been really illuminating um, in terms of how role play can sort of open different doors with you when there are different stakes, um, which is I think a fun thing. It has been fun for me to explore, and I've gotten to do a bunch of like really interesting choices that come out of nowhere. Um, but have been great, and I really liked that Garlic was just like, what are you doing? I really liked that sort of complex interplay there at the end too. So,
It does kind of raise for me like an interesting question of what would it mean to approach a longer campaign with the same relationship to like risk that we do with one shots? Like, because with longer campaigns, it's so often the first priority is survival, right? I want this character to keep going. This character, we have a bigger thing that's going on, right? Each of these little adventures is part of a larger whole. But then, and part of this is me just thinking as a, you know, still in that paladin vein of a class of a group of folks who do throw themselves wholeheartedly, often without blinking, into chaos and danger. And like, what would it mean to and here I'm just kind of spitballing ideas that also since starting to play with Open the Gates Gaming well, a few months ago now, a bunch more one shots than I usually do. What would it mean to approach? What would it mean to play a longer campaign? Like every adventure is a one shot, and sort of see how that changes my choices, or see how that might add urgency or intensity or risk. It requires like a little bit of emotional work on your own part of like being willing to let a character go if that is like being like having to step in knowing, hey, this character might die because that's the way I'm trying to play this. But I don't know. It could be really interesting.
It brings to mind something that a different group that I play with had brought up a couple years back of the idea of being able to switch off who was DMing a campaign. Because it's the four of us, and two of us are generally the kind of designated DMs. It would be some kind of job board setting where you could bring a new character to the table. You wouldn't have to, especially because certain people would be running or not. And I think that what you're talking about there with trying to both be okay with losing a character but still bringing your all to the table,
Mhm.
I think that that could work interestingly for a situation like that, where it is kind of a not necessarily a monster of the week situation, but it's a bunch of almost an anthology kind of. I'd be interested in seeing someone play that out.
Gray, have you ever played a West Marches style campaign?
No,
Are you familiar with this?
vaguely.
So it was designed for basically groups of like large player pools with like large groups of players with kind of maybe irregular or rotating
Mm.
attendance. It was designed by a person named Ben Robbins, and it I guess would be best known right now for being the style being used in Critical Role Campaign 4.
Gotcha.
But the idea being that, right, not everyone's playing every session or every adventure, so you can pull in and out. And many, many years ago, I knew someone who's running something like that, but also each player had 3 or 4 characters that they would rotate in a job board style.
Oh,
So there's actually some really interesting and well-developed mechanics for building exactly that kind of thing for longer campaigns, and it can be really fun. And yeah, opens up a lot of that freedom for if your character dies, you can still play next week, and also you don't have to. You've already done the work of building other characters or finding reasons to be part of the worlds without, and you don't have to resort to everybody's favorite. Oh, this is my um, this is my twin who's now here to avenge their twin's death. Though I would never say a bad word about twins showing up to avenge their dead siblings. I once in one campaign ended up on the fourth of quadruplets, and it was awesome.
they all have similar names. I hope they did.
Yes, well,
Incredible.
I think they all had the exact same name.
Really?
Because it was easier for their parents to just yell one name out.
Oh. Oh no.
Also, that gives you some psychic trauma to build on.
Yeah.
Well, certainly by the fourth one, they were less excited about adventuring.
Um, uh, I think that's an interesting thing about 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I feel like it really does encourage attachment to characters in a way that other TTRPGs don't as much. And I don't know. I think it's partially a mechanics thing and a style thing, and just the way that they've sort of leaned into collaborative storytelling, which is one of my like what I deeply love about the version of the game that is like we're all playing now. Um but it is different. Like there was a time where I was like, okay, I have my fighter died, so I have another fighter who is basically the same fighter. It doesn't matter, right? Even the sort of artifice of changing the names is uh is a bit silly in that case. But uh I found that I have been playing differently and becoming more comfortable with making big choices and bigger risks in campaign settings because of the one shot experience. um to 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 just kind of take big swings, and man, if something weird happens, man, something weird happens, and then just figure it out. Like what's the worst case scenario? You get to build a new cool character. Oh no. So, I think that's cool. So, so what did you so Gray, being a traditional martial player,
Yeah.
um, what w- what did you like and not like about Wizard?
It's nice to be smart again. I hate to put it like that, but so often
No.
intelligence is my dump stat. Um, and it's very often become kind of a staple at the table in the groups that I play with of 10 is average because 10 is average for a stat. And I feel that so often, especially in 5e, it isn't necessarily reflective that a 10 is average. You know, if you're slightly below average intelligence, you already have a -1. I feel that that can be really damning. It is nice to play a character that has a high intelligence. Um, that that's definitely something I'd missed. I had played an artificer once back in 2021, who was my baby. I did not play him well. Um, but that's really the kicker. Was it was nice to play a character of high intelligence, but it was also nice to be able to try and problem solve using spells. Um, it's fun to be someone who's trying to puzzle through these things, especially to with the balance in a campaign currently. It's uh, it's kind of a flavored Chains of Avernus. Um, we had a situation in Candlekeep where the puzzle was, oh, we are trapped in this demiplane. But the thing is, the study rooms in Candlekeep are also in demiplanes, meaning that some form of spell at the time would be able to be used to get from one to the other. We weren't trapped there, especially because someone was staying in one of those, and so it would be very familiar. But my fighter barbarian, who had an intelligence of 10 and no grasp of magic, it didn't make a whole lot of sense for him to be the one to be like, "Hey guys, I have an idea." Um, so it was nice just to be able to do that. Really, um, it was it was nice to be playing a character that had the ability to do those things, but also that had a focus in something that I like. I like parasites a lot. I really like insects. I'm an entomology minor. Um, so it was fun to be able to do that and to have a character who really cares for this kind of thing, and also who does a little bit of academia. But I know you guys had mentioned that you play warlocks and that you play paladins. Have you guys branched out with classes as well? I'm assuming you guys have. You've played for a while.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I don't think there's any class I haven't played. I mean, there's some subclasses I haven't gone near, but particularly the sort of more evil flavored ones, just because I haven't had the opportunities. But I think the class I
Yeah.
played least is the artificer. Um, but I try to. I mean, I part of my approach is like I try to do something different every time, just to see what's possible. It's been a long time since I played a rogue, and I recently just rolled one up for a campaign that's not started yet. So yeah, I like the variety. I like the challenge.
What level rogue did you roll up?
10.
Oh,
Okay. Interesting. Uh, I have not played a lot of classes actually. I have never played a
really?
barbarian. Um,
They're fun.
I've never played a wizard. Um, I have never played a druid. I find that I gravitate towards the charisma casters. Like I've played bards a couple of times, and I enjoy them a lot. Well, the other thing I like about 5e, and I was saying this to Sean the other day in another conversation that we're having, that uh, they really give you a lot of ways to do things. Like if you want to be the healer warlock, right? That's available, right?
Mhm.
If you want to be the martial bard, that's available. Like there's lots of different ways to get to uh similar sort of functional roles in a party um via different pathways. But yeah, I really like rogues. I like warlocks because they're mechanically simple. Um and they're just kind of all boom. Um uh yeah, you get two spell slots, but they're big. um uh but I do love a rogue. I feel like rogues are always handy. I played a the what is it, the magic rogue, whatever that's
Arcane Trickster?
the arcane trickster, which was so fun because it was like best of all worlds, and you have like there's nothing that you're bad at, and eventually you get to the point where you don't even like have to do checks sometimes for stuff as a rogue, which is kind of great and feels very satisfying sometimes.
Yes, the one I rolled up is actually a 9th level rogue with a single level in wizard, and has a 20 passive perception, insight, and
Oh,
investigation. So
Yeah,
yeah.
expertise is crazy. Like the number of skills that you get is fun. This is another reason I like bards. Like jack
Mhm.
of all trades is nothing to sneeze at, even at like level 3. So like you're just kind of good at stuff, and that feels fun as a character. Although uh I recently, speaking of dump stats, I recently rolled up a cleric that I've been playing who has a strength of 6.
oh.
Um that's how the dice came out. I had to do something with it. Um, so my cleric is a tiny man, um, with deep conviction. He's a real asshole.
Uh,
He's not a nice person. I chose. He's a light cleric of a Monitor, I think is how you say it. Who is a sort of judgy sun god. And he is yeah, not yeah, he's a real asshole. But but it's fun, and it's fun playing somebody who is a real asshole with a strength of 6.
All bark, no bite.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, like, other than like, you can cast spells, but like, there's just like, yeah, yeah.
it's funny you mention because I'm also currently playing a cleric who's a huge asshole. Um, we had needed a healer, and I, again, I really don't play casters all that much. Despite the fact that I've mentioned how many casters I've played, mostly it's hit stuff. Uh, and I was thinking, well, not I don't fall into the party of lawful characters are boring. I love a good lawful character. I think they're so compelling. I think that a character who chooses to remain static is something really interesting. Um, but I was thinking I don't want to play a good aligned cleric. I want some interest in that respect. So they're lawful evil, domain of order, and their whole shtick is I want to assimilate everything into myself. So I've named myself after the world. The thing is, I don't want to hurt people. I just want to hurt deities and gods, which aren't people. You guys are so silly. Um, and they are really just a huge asshole who thinks they're better than other people, which I think. And we were talking about that earlier with paladins, how you can very much be blinded with that conviction of the way that I believe is right, what the thing that I follow as well is right. And I think it's interesting to explore, especially with clerics and paladins, how a character can fall into that. Um, I really do think that's interesting. But
No, I think it's awesome. It's interesting because you guys have both kind of mentioned alignment, and like that is the one part of this game that just I can never like get in tune with.
yeah, I
Hmm.
definitely.
Okay. Now we're in my world. Let's talk alignment problems.
Yes.
But please, great. You were gonna.
But I feel that way, especially getting into having so many characters under my belt for longer running campaigns. I can feel often that alignment doesn't really fully encapsulate what's happening, and especially as someone who's taught new players a lot of. I often end up teaching people how to play D&D. Um, it can be hard, I feel, to try and explain that in a way that doesn't feel restrictive.
Hmm.
And what's always the way that I view it, which could differ, has always been you are self-serving or you're serving of other people, or and also I feel like there's that conflation of I'm a diehard lawful defender. I love the lawful alignment. Okay, I feel that too often, especially in a popular sphere, we see chaotic as the only interesting one and lawful as being boring. I hate that. Um, but lawful as having, a moral code as a strict view that you hold yourself to, even. I feel that there's so much wiggle room for interpretation within there that gives it so much potential. And also changing alignments throughout a campaign in one character, I love. But anyway, I'm so sorry. Sean, you were going to talk about alignments.
No, no, no. I was gonna ask your thoughts on them, but I'm so interested to hear you say to describe lawful as having an internal moral code, given so often moral is associated with the other half of the alignment, right? The good, neutral, evil. And I don't know. I sort of love the alignment system in some ways because I mean I sort of began playing D&D with second edition um, as part of a generation of folks who hated fourth edition so much they just played second instead. Um, and that was an edition in which alignment like had real mechanical implications. For example, paladins could only be lawful good.
Yeah.
Um, species were restricted to certain kinds of alignment. Some classes where there were spells that worked or didn't work depending on your alignment, and that's one part of it. Um, in some ways, like I like the idea that that other beings, so whether it's the gods or other kinds of like preternaturally powerful creatures, also have a sense of how the world should work and work in ways to enforce that, right? But fifth edition system is descriptive, right, rather than prescriptive, and that I think is part of the challenge here. Is it's often difficult for new players to read it as. Often the default is to read it as prescriptive. You pick a lawful good character, you need to play it in this way. But I mean, part of the way I've always understood the lawful to chaotic alignment is the best way it was described to me is that a lawful character has a sense for the way the world should be or work,
Mhm.
and like extremely strong sense. It may not at all have anything to do with laws. Um, it may in fact look to somebody else like pure chaos, but they are internally consistent in the way they understand how the world should work. And that fits with how I think about certain kinds of characters, certain kinds of classes, right? The paladin or the um I don't know, even the rogue, for example, right? If there is a sense for like if you have a kind of Robin Hood style rogue who steals from certain people or does certain kinds of crimes for certain reasons, it to me would make perfect sense to play that in some ways as a lawful character. Um, but also the idea that we can detach that question of like how the world works or operates from questions of morality does raise all sorts of interesting possibilities. I think for me, when I'm approaching both building characters and playing them as um or building adventures. Yes, chaotic evil are like the I mean, the sort of baddest of bad guys, but part of the challenge of the chaotic evil bad guy is that like my favorite chaotic evil character, when we think about the ways people will apply these alignments to like pop culture characters,
Yeah.
is like half the time they don't even know what they're gonna do next, and that's what makes them so terrifying. Right. A lawful evil character is dangerous for all sorts of reasons, but what it can be is predictable in certain ways, which makes it really good as a foil or an antagonist for an adventure because it gives the party opportunities to plan and build in ways that chaotic evil. I don't know. I think there's a lot of room for it, and as long as you don't see it as unchangeably restrictive, because I mean in my mind it's no different than picking, I don't know, a name or a personality trait for a character in terms of the restrictions it implies. Like all of the choices we make are restrictive. If I pick a fighter, I am to a certain extent removing my ability to be a sweet precious peace cleric, unless I do some whimsical multi-class nonsense, which is usually how I play things. But I don't know. I like the idea of creativity, or I like versions of creativity that require us to work within certain kinds of boundaries and manipulate those boundaries in ways. I think for me at least, I find that a lot more satisfying and in some ways creative than just having an open sandbox to play in. I don't do well with zero structure. Um, it's the same as we talk a lot about the guide decision guides. As somebody will ask, a DM will ask, "What do you want to do?" when all of Infinity opens up before you. I feel like that a lot of the time when I'm coming up with the non-mechanical parts of my characters. Um, but
Yeah.
this is not to say that the alignment chart isn't. I'm looking at some of Will's comments in the Twitch chat here. I think the alignment chart may be a case that it's like there's too much baggage attached to it at this point, that we need to do something different with alignments in order to shift away from that real sense that it's prescriptive among so many folks.
Yeah.
So, um, I think I have complex feeling about alignment because, like, I don't know, man. I think one person's good is not necessarily another person's good, and so it's difficult to do that. And I think it's also sometimes like I don't think characters who are evil think they're evil, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times they think they're doing something for the right reasons, right? I
Mhm.
think that's a more interesting choice than like I'm naughty. Um
Yeah.
uh so so like it's not necessarily a problem with this alignment chart. I think it's almost like all my characters always have an alignment. I just don't want anybody ever to know what it is.
Right.
Because like that's a pact that I'm making with like my character is like it's their their self-image is deeply rooted in that. And like to uh you know I think it's yeah, I think it would be like a weird thing to to put out there into the world and to like to share that way. I don't know. Is it there's like a meta above table thing that like bugs me about it. But I do find that like yeah, finding pop culture examples like Will saying in the chat, like yes, I believe that lawful characters believe in like structures and societal contracts in a way that chaotic characters don't, right? Um uh or that they're less meaningful for those characters. I don't understand what neutral is other than wishy-washy. Honestly, the lawful to chaotic spectrum makes more sense to me than the good to evil spectrum in many ways.
I mean, part of the
Yeah.
problem is it's not a spectrum; it's three options.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean.
And also, I
Or
think that a character as well will behave differently given the situation as well. That isn't always encapsulated in, good to evil or lawful to chaotic. It is, and I think that I'm aligning here with what you guys are talking about, where it should be seen less as a kind of defining thing of this character can only act in those ways, but rather a jumping off point of this could be how this person falls within that very strict kind of grid, and to build off of that from there. Because I do fully agree with you. I truly do not think that a lot of evil characters believe they're doing evil. I don't believe they think they're doing the wrong thing. I think often they believe they're doing the right thing for the right reasons, just that especially people from the outside would be like, "Hey, that shit's evil that you're doing right there." It it definitely ties into, I feel, tabletop as a whole, but also how we look at media and how we look at morality.
yeah, I don't know, man. It's just it's
It
I mean, part of
depends.
yeah. I mean, it does depend, and I think at the same time, right, there is a real subjectivity to it, and maybe that's what I find so interesting about it, right? The fact that I could easily see two lawful good characters on the exact opposite side of an issue to the point that it comes to like, you know, full big or bad guys. Like one of them is the evil, like the big evil bad guy in a scenario, and the other one is the super fancy hero. But both of them understand themselves to be lawful good in that framework. Um, I don't know. I think there's space for. I mean, I think ultimately it comes down to that question of descriptive versus prescriptive, right? In a situation where you're not as a player sharing it with the other players, what we're looking at is a one way of mapping out a character's sense of who they are. And thinking about it as something that changes and sense of who they are in relation to how they understand the world, right? They understand themselves as good. That could mean all sorts of things. One is it could mean that they're aligned with a certain set of established values, but it could also just mean that there's a lot way worse people out there. And then you get into those situations where some of our culturally most beloved stories are giving people who see themselves as good guys scenarios in which every option is horrible. But opting out is not a choice. There's a lot of interesting spaces that could work, but yeah, I mean, to me, it really comes down to that question of, is this a mechanical thing, which it no longer is in Dungeons and Dragons? And if it's not mechanical, then does it, the question of like how or if at all does it impact the character that I'm creating? And yeah, for me, it's just another set of tools that one could use or can use to imagine who your character is and how they relate to the world around them. But there's nothing, right? Because there is nothing mechanical writing it on it anymore. Most of the time, I don't even write down an alignment. I write down a much more idiotic phrase, like, good boy trying to be good. And that means nothing to me, except that it's usually the description of it's how I sell people on one particular anime that I really like. That's it. That's the only time. Like it, yeah. It's like these aren't, and or even more abstract, um, uh, like whimsical gremlin was what I wrote down for a character I played like last year. And I had no idea what that was going to mean until 3 sessions in when I did something weird and gremlin-y. There are some high level, as Will's pointing out, some high level items and things that do factor in alignment, but whatever.
And I do recall I had played Curse of Strahd. To not say anything explicitly, it had come up that certain characters were lawfully aligned or good aligned. I mean, and as Will mentioned, some items, and some spells, but also in that case, it was explicitly certain characters would deliver certain information depending on your alignment. Which I'm not necessarily sure, thinking from a thinking just from a player perspective, how that would come across in world, if it's some kind of like ID check or what have you before that information is delivered. But if I recall, it
There
had come
used
up
to
a
be
couple
a
times.
spell that in at least I can't remember the last
Detect evil
edition
and
it was
good?
in. No, there was like a detect alignment spells, but detect evil and
Really?
good, yeah. And even like for as long as I played D&D, detect evil and good has I've never seen a DM use it for player characters.
Yeah.
And even the my sort of longest DM in second edition basically said that detect evil and good would only work if somebody was acting with specific intention in a given moment, right?
Mm.
It's not going to classify individuals holistically, but like if someone's like, I'm going to do this evil thing right now, which, sometimes people do, or I'm going to do this thing that I know is wrong, let's say.
Mhm.
And in those cases, it seems less about alignment than it is about, detecting intention. It's like a magical version of an insight check, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It is, yeah, it does it. And when it comes up, it's a strange thing. Like, how are we, but I mean, really
Yeah.
the question is like, does this thing exist in world? And if so, what the hell? Okay. Versus does it exist, metagamey? Um, but there, yeah, sorry, I totally interrupted you there as well.
No.
But um I
It,
also just want to, oh, please.
no, go for it.
I just want to like just so back, and I'm going to drop this in the chat too. Back to Gustavo's beautifully casual, like the only really bad characters are the neutral ones. Say more.
Um, I don't know, man. I don't. It's not. I don't mean bad. I just mean like I
That
don't
definitely wasn't the
understand.
word you used, but I couldn't remember what that actually was. Yeah.
But I just don't know. I don't know what that choice means. I think this is where I get bound up with the whole alignment chart in general. Is like
Mhm.
these choices are different, and also like there's a lot of like when we're playing this game, which admittedly has a lot of like Western European sort of value systems kind of baked into it, right? That lawful good in that context may mean something really different than what it might mean to somebody with a different cultural background. And I don't think that that is a fair box to put things in. I don't like it. So I mean, so this, yeah, but and I find that neutral is just like a wishy-washy choice. Like, what am I choosing? I'm choosing not choosing, which is like can be. I don't think it's. I think that's maybe not an interesting choice. I think there's a way that you could do it. To me, it's not an interesting choice. That seems more like a harder thing to play in a way that I'm not going to enjoy. And so this is all again to say personal preference because I think you guys are making
Mhm.
some like really great points about the alignment chart. Like I really like the way that you're sort of approaching this, Sean and Will, sort of as like a as guideposts. It's one of the things that I really like is the bonds uh,
Mhm.
sort of method of like this is the thing my character cares about, right? It's gonna be this thing, and like they can be sort of they're much more specific, but they are sort of like, oh yeah, it's like that makes a nice little rubric for choices, right? It's
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, I care about my family, so how does this choice affect my family? Or like I'm greedy, and that's like uh, you know uh, these are sort of simpler sort of wayfinders, I think, in some ways than good and evil
Yeah.
and neutral. And I don't know what neutral is.
I mean, and to a certain extent, I think these
Oh
are
man, we're getting Star Wars in here now.
well, I mean, well, I mean, Will brought up the how interesting it would be if there were situations in which like a needle swinging around this alignment chart did have mechanical impacts. Um, I think to a certain extent, and I feel like this way about quite a few different fifth and 5.5 mechanics, that it's kind of not nostalgia, but just like a legacy item that feels too D&D to get rid of.
It's a
Um,
vestigial limb.
yeah. I mean, certainly to a certain. I mean, again, given the ways in which, like, given how little, like the alignment chart actually comes up in, say, building a character mechanically or conceptually, or even the kind of published content, it does feel a little bit like that. Um, but also, even to your point, Gustavo, about kind of cultural difference. I mean, if we look back to the like archetypical like first second edition lawful good paladin, that is a like Templar crusader, and also ew. I don't like
Yeah.
is our model for lawful good like um laser focused religious warriors, and maybe why. But and I, even now that I think about it, and I'm sort of partially defending the alignment system, I am, and the more I think about characters I played and situations I found myself in games, is the most interesting times I've had with it are when people are like actively push against it, right? As a metric to push against. Like, what does it mean to be lawful good in a way that looks chaotic evil to everyone else? Or um there was a about 10-15 years ago, there was a um green text story that would go around about a character who played a paladin who talked about being lawful good as being like constantly at war with your desire to not do that.
Mm.
Um, about like constantly having to hold yourself back from giving into. I mean, and there in that case, it's basically just um, Star Wars Jedi stuff, which is again great. Like, what does it mean to like? What is? I mean, one other way to think about this is like, what does it mean to have these an ideal to be living up to? And here we get into basically the sort of ideals, flaws, bond system, which I really like. And what does it mean to like? What might it mean to have these ideals, but also not believe you could ever actually achieve them, like as a character? Um, though maybe we're getting a little bit too into conversations I should be having with my therapist rather than on stream. But
But what is D&D
that's
for if
D&D.
not
Right?
therapy?
Exactly. But there is an interesting
Um,
piece to be said there of having these characters, because I am so fascinated with the cleric and paladin. What is it to have a character that is aspiring to do that, but feeling that fundamentally they are unable to achieve it, but that they must try it anyway? And it has something to do, again, with my fascination of static characters, of there being something so compelling in their efforts to maintain that. It I think there's a lot to be said, which isn't being said in me just repeating myself there. Um, but just to echo you there, it really is something interesting.
Yeah, what would it mean to be a lawful good character in a world that is never ever fit neatly into that box, right? Or to try to be. Or on the other side of it, what does it mean to be like a paladin who's committed to a oath, or a cleric who's committed to a god, but like maybe it's a little bit of sunk cost fallacy and you don't actually fully
Mhm.
believe that, but you're committed to trying, and like I don't know, all sorts of possibilities there that are really interesting. Um, that's that's the joy of the game, right?
Yeah.
yeah, no, and I mean, like, again, I I think obviously I think it's deeply interesting, right? The question of alignment. I just think it's
Mhm.
um I just don't know I don't know what to do with it mechanically in the game. So I frequently just
Oh,
hand wave
yeah,
it, right?
yeah.
And like I like to play like my characters are typically good. My warlocks are typically good.
Mhm.
Whether or not they have a pact with some sort of dark entity, I think for me that's a very interesting thing. Like why is this? Why is this, and what are you doing with this power that you've now been given, and what is the nature of this bargain, and like what is going on there? I think that's a reason I like to play warlocks, because I think there's like a weird moral ambiguity to them that's a little bit baked in. But it means that you don't fit in any of the boxes, right? So yeah.
Yeah. And I think I've lost my train of thought. I don't. I apologize. um, we were saying. Oh, I think that speaking to like, and I think there's a general tendency as well to play good characters. I know I've got a couple neutral because I do like the neutral option. I do. I hate to say it. Um, I think that the broad majority of people are neutral aligned. Um, but I think there's a tendency to play good aligned characters because we associate that with you are going to mesh with the party. I think that there is a need to reframe having a fully good aligned party to having a party that has goals that take them in a similar direction. You know, having them be framed in the same way, but still fostering enough of a dynamic and enough conflict within that to tell something compelling, as opposed to just restricting it to you have to be good aligned. Because again, as you guys are saying here, what exactly is good aligned to different groups of people, you know, broadly culturally, but even just on an individual basis? Um, if that makes any sense at all there.
Yeah, and then part of it also is like so much of what brings people to games like D&D is they want to be heroes. And that or the characters are characters that want to be heroes. These are stories about being heroes, right?
Yeah.
And so it fits with a sense of goodness, right? That's what heroes do. Um, and that's maybe a whole and I'm going to stop there before we get into a whole different 45-minute rant from me about power creep over the editions of Dungeons and Dragons. But it makes sense, right? Why folks want to play good line, both alignment with another party and group, and we're here to save the day.
Yeah. No, you
Uh,
want to feel like you're doing the right thing. And I totally get that in someone who's playing an evil character right now. I don't like that. There's an odd dissonance between, you know, I want this character to succeed because I'm playing them, and also a matter of, man, the whole like religious like assimilation thing is kind of shitty. Except like really shitty. So I understand absolutely that there is that want to feel like you're doing something good to be achieving these great heroic feats. But Gustavo, I'd completely cut you off there. That's on me.
no, no, no. I think you guys are good. And I think, yeah, I think that's interesting. So, do you think that your character thinks that they're evil?
No, not at all. This character is very much wrapped up in this idea of they simply are doing the right thing. If other people don't understand, it's just because they can't. How do they have that? How could someone else have that whole picture? Um, they suck like a lot. It's I recall a guiding concept for this person was, and of course my other party members do not know this because they're a pacifist. They don't like hurting people. Um, but a guiding concept at the start between me and my DM was this line of if a river is kind of what's the word channeling its distributaries, do you call that murder? Uh, which not how I would use that metaphor at all. I wouldn't use that metaphor because it's a dumb one. But this character is not really grasping the whole picture. This character thinks that it's as simple as if I just assimilate this power into myself, then things will be calm, and that's a good thing. to say nothing of the different cultures and beliefs that are present. No, they don't think themselves evil.
Right.
They think themselves as being willing to do things people consider bad for the good of the whole, which is always an interesting thing for me. Um, Not necessarily in a way of, because I think that especially like in like U.S. American popular culture, there is that, especially in like military duper movies, of we do the bad things to protect people and we get our hands dirty and the world stays clean. Um, but I think that that's an interesting concept, looking into a character's psyche of why do they think this and why do they think they get to make the choice to do bad things to absolve the rest of the world. It's something to interrogate. So to answer your question in an entirely long-winded way, absolutely not. They think they are the best.
Yeah.
Um,
No, and my asshole cleric also is also like a person who has a deep belief in hierarchy and like the teachings of their religion, God, and the dictums thereof, and thinks that they're doing a good thing by being real fucking dicks to anything that's defined as like would be unclean, right? In the eyes of or be judged against by their God. But that's good. That's what a good person does.
exactly.
But I do want to throw out something here that like I think is worth mentioning, at least to me, which is we got a couple of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic shout outs in the chat, and I think another thing about um, alignment that one of the things I love about Star Wars, which is like a weird thing to admit these days, sometimes maybe, um, but that these choices, despite the fact that they're presented as a binary, is like a is a is a dynamic relationship that swings in different ways in the moment when you're making choices. I think that is I think of all of the bad Star Wars things that are out there, I think this is one interesting thing about sort of the way that that universe is set up, where there's a struggle, like there's and finding a balance between a light and a dark choice, and what that means contextually can change and be driven by different things, and I think that's really interesting, and I think Star Wars at its best lives in that place, and at its worst
Mhm.
is when when they move far away from it. But I think that's what makes to me. I mean, like these questions are really fun. I really love exploring them through D&D, through other uh, fiction, narrative things, art, movies, things. I love things that think about this and make me think about it. But I just sometimes the little rubric that they've come up with just isn't jiving for me. So that's all there is to say. But I've really enjoyed talking to you guys about this. I'm gonna toss that out there into the world.
No, it is a
Uh,
really reductive rubric, and that's so much of the challenge of it, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Um, I mean, even with the best of Star Wars, right? Like so much of the best explorations of the kind of light, dark side Force stuff boils down to not what people are doing, but their intentions behind it, right? What are they tapping into in order to make that choice? What motivates the actions they're taking, right? It's less about what they do, which again is much more interesting because it is all about sort of internal struggle rather than external manifestation. Um, but yeah,
Um,
this is why we love D&D.
I wish I wish Star Wars did more interesting stuff with redemption as much as they do with the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I think there's I don't know. I'd love to see more stories like that because I feel like they're always flirting with temptation.
Yeah.
Or
Well, I feel
what does it
that
look like to turn that around?
Well, it's because the Jedi's are
not
still just
to
paladins. Sorry.
no
No,
no
go ahead. What?
not to not to get a little too not to feel a little too real world here, but I feel that there's also that very, I feel, Christian philosophy with writing of you can fall, but you can't come back from that. That I feel is prevalent in Star Wars, but that I feel even in D&D can be prevalent.
Mhm.
Where it is that matter of you can decay morally, but coming back from that is going to be something much more difficult, or is just a sign that you were good all along, which I don't love in terms of a moral system. Um, I know, I know that I see that a lot, at least in terms of that kind of
Mhm.
philosophy.
Right. Yeah. That the bad was something external that was done to you rather than, um, yeah, it's,
Yeah,
it
and
doesn't
that
feel
there.
satisfying. Yeah.
Sorry,
No,
and
no.
that there is kind of your core true morality as well of, well, that just means you were at your core good all along, or that because you were tempted and didn't come back from that, that just means you're truly evil. That I feel, D&D with its alignment system can get into. Um, and it was something that obviously we talked about within disability studies where we'd done that. It was a reading from a book, Disfigured, I believe is the title, where it was that matter of if someone in some form of fairy tale is gifted, that is is made to no longer be disabled, it is because they have learned that lesson from it. I feel that it digs into that too. Of the bad guys are disabled because they just aren't good enough, heavy quotes there, to recover from that and what have you. So I'm very interested in morality in terms of a theme. It's something that's interesting
Yep.
to me and how it's weaponized. Um, I could talk about it for far too long.
um, no, this has been great. This has been I've loved this. I'm looking and I think I don't know when we derailed this, but
Oh
this has
God.
been an excellent rabbit hole that we've been down, and I really have enjoyed it. I think chat has enjoyed it too. Um, but um, yeah, uh, I'm really I'm always happy to explore this and discuss with those people. I think it's one of the most fascinating things that we can about the games that we play. Um, and what games we play can teach us about ourselves and about the world we live in. And I think it's a great reason to play games. So um, but maybe we should
Circle
get back
back.
on track a little bit and circle back to just to say I think was there any last thoughts about Riddle or anything else we've talked about today that we want to just shout out before we adjourn for the evening?
It was very nice. One of the tools that was used during the session, it was really, really nice to have those post-its of this is what's being said, this is how this is being pronounced, this is how it's being.
Oh yeah.
It was just very useful. My hearing is really, really bad. So very often I cannot hear character names or locations or what have you. So having that kind of moving along with us to say, this is the location we're at, this is the character that was just spoken to, what have you, that was really, really nice. And of course, it's not solely a hallmark of this one shot, but in playing it and how Elizabeth had run it, it was really nice.
That is awesome and a great point. And I think just a great example of Elizabeth having just a really cool style of DMing that is just very considerate of different needs and comfort levels for players and making everybody feel um, at home. And I think that is a great example of that. So thanks for calling that out. That was good.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's a lot that was really nice. That's just off the dome. Um, it was good, and it was really fun to play with you guys again.
uh, well, you know, It was really awesome. Speaking for myself, but I think for probably everybody as well. It was awesome to play with you. It has been awesome to talk with you today. Um, Sean, any last thoughts from you?
Mm, no, just another shout out for the uh, Autistic Self Advocacy Network, a really cool group doing incredible work. We're really glad to have been able to raise some money for them. Thanks to everybody who watched the streams and who donated. Truly, that was awesome. And yeah, it was a really fun adventure. A lot of threads and possibilities. I think that I'm it's not too often with one shots, but I'd be excited to play it a couple more times and see how it could play out in really different ways. Um, but yeah,
And again, for me, thank thank you guys for chatting with me. This has been awesome. I'm very grateful every time I get to talk with you guys or play with you and to do anything with these folks, especially when we get to do awesome things like raise money for good causes, which is just awesome. But thank you. I think we'll be back next week with I believe Brindlewood.
that's right. You get to see
Another Brindle.
Gustavo playing Brindlewood.
Oh yeah, I think we get to see Mercedes come back. So that'll be fun. Um, New trio on deck for a couple of weeks. And then off into the summer we go. Thank you everybody in chat today. You guys have been awesome. It's been a great time. Uh, have a lovely evening.